The thunder rumbled across the Colorado sky like a warning from the heavens as Willow Hayes stepped off the stagecoach onto the muddy main street of Animas Forks. Her hands trembled despite the warmth of the June evening in 1876, clutching a worn leather satchel containing everything she owned in this world. The mining town sprawled before her, raw and unfinished like her own future, nestled high in the San Juan Mountains where men came to strike it rich or die trying. Neither fate concerned her much. She had come here to disappear. "Miss, you planning on standing there all night?" The stagecoach driver tossed down her second bag, spattering mud across her already travel-worn skirts. "No, sir. Thank you for the journey." Her voice carried the refined tones of her Eastern upbringing, something she would need to shed quickly in this rough-hewn place. The driver tipped his hat and climbed back onto his perch. "Hotels that way. Better get settled before dark. Storms in these mountains ain't forgiving," Willow nodded, gathering her things. 23 years old and alone for the first time in her life, she felt the weight of her decision with each step through the mud. The town was alive with the sounds of piano music drifting from saloons, miners laughing, and the constant clanging from the stamp mill crushing ore day and night. It was nothing like Boston, and that was precisely why she had chosen it. The Silverton Hotel stood 3 stories tall, one of the few proper buildings among the hastily constructed shacks and tents. Willow pushed through the door, the warmth inside a welcome relief from the threatening storm. "Need a room, miss?" The proprietor was a portly man with kind eyes that didn't match the harshness of his surroundings. "Yes, please, just for a few nights until I find more permanent arrangements." The man eyed her suspiciously. "You got family here?" "No, I've come for work," he laughed. "Not much work for ladies in Animas Forks, less you're looking to work in one of the saloons." Willow straightened her spine. "I'm a trained seamstress. I understand mining towns are full of men who need mending." His expression softened. "That they are. Well, room's yours for $1 a night. Second floor, last door on the right." She paid him, took the key, and climbed the narrow staircase. The room was sparse but clean: a bed, washstand, and small writing desk beneath a window overlooking the main street. Willow set her bags down and moved to the window just as the first fat raindrops began to fall. Lightning illuminated the mountains surrounding the town, massive and indifferent to the tiny human settlement daring to exist in their shadow. Tomorrow, she would begin again. Tonight, she would allow herself this moment of fear, of doubt, this last indulgence of wondering if she'd made a terrible mistake. The storm raged through the night, matching the turmoil in Willow's heart. By morning, the skies had cleared to reveal a brilliant blue canopy stretched over the mountain town. She dressed carefully in her plainest dress, pinned her dark hair into a simple knot, and set out to find work. The general store seemed the most logical place to start. The bell above the door jingled as she entered, drawing the attention of the proprietor and the only other customer, a tall man whose presence seemed to fill the modest space. "Good morning," the shopkeeper called. "What can I help you with, miss?" "I've just arrived in town," Willow explained. "I'm a seamstress looking for work." The shopkeeper scratched his beard. "Well now, that's something we could surely use around here. Men tear through clothes something fierce in the mines." "I can repair almost anything," she assured him, "and I'm skilled at making new garments as well." "Tell you what," he said, "I've got a corner in the back you could set up in. Take in mending, make a few things to sell. We'll split the earnings, 70-30 your favor." It was a better offer than she'd expected. "That's very generous, Mr. Jenkins, Thomas Jenkins." He extended a weathered hand which she shook firmly. "Willow Hayes, when may I begin?" "Today, if you've a mind to." "I've got a sewing machine in storage that the last seamstress left behind when she married a miner and moved to Denver." The other customer, who had been silently observing their exchange, finally spoke. "If she's half as good as she claims, you're getting the better end of that deal, Tom." Willow turned to face the man fully. He was perhaps 30, with sun-bronzed skin and eyes the color of the sky after a storm. Not a miner. His hands, while calloused, weren't blackened with coal or ore dust. His clothing was practical but well-maintained. Dark trousers, a blue cotton shirt rolled at the sleeves, and a leather vest. The gun belt at his hip suggested he was comfortable with its use. "Miss Hayes, this here's Henry Keller," Jenkins introduced. "Runs the K-Bar-K ranch just outside of town." "A pleasure, Mr. Keller," Willow said with a polite nod. "Likewise." His eyes held hers for a moment longer than necessary. "Tom, I'll need those supplies sent out to the ranch by tomorrow." "You'll have them," Jenkins promised. With a tip of his hat to Willow, Henry Keller strode out of the store, his spurs jingling lightly against the wooden floor. "That's a good man," Jenkins commented as the door closed. "Fair in his dealings, keeps to himself mostly. Came here about 5 years ago, built that ranch from nothing, has some of the finest horses in the territory now." Willow hadn't asked for the information, but she nodded politely. "About the sewing machine." Right. "Let me show you where you'll be working." The corner Jenkins offered was better than expected, well lit by a large window and spacious enough for the machine, a cutting table, and a small display area for finished goods. By midday, Willow had set up her workspace and already received 3 mending jobs from miners who'd heard through Jenkins' gossip that a seamstress was in town. For the first time since leaving Boston, Willow felt a flutter of hope. Perhaps here, in this place where no one knew her name or her past, she could truly start anew. The days fell into a pattern. Willow would rise early, take breakfast in the hotel dining room, and walk to the general store where she would sew until sundown. Word of her skills spread quickly, and soon she had more work than she could manage in a day. Jenkins, delighted with the additional business her presence brought to his store, offered to let her use the small storeroom behind her workspace as living quarters to save on hotel costs. "It ain't fancy," he warned, showing her the room, "but it's private and you'd be saving your money." The room was indeed simple, just large enough for a narrow bed, a chest for her belongings, and a small stove for heat and cooking. But it was clean, and the thought of having her own space again made the decision easy. "I'll take it," she agreed. "Thank you for your kindness, Mr. Jenkins." "Call me Tom," he insisted. "Everyone does." That evening, as she moved her few possessions from the hotel to her new home, Willow allowed herself to believe that perhaps fate had finally dealt her a kinder hand. She was arranging her clothes in the chest when a knock came at her door. Opening it, she found Henry Keller standing there, hat in hand. "Mr. Keller," she said, surprised. "Can I help you, Miss Hayes?" he began, then cleared his throat. "I heard you'd moved in. Thought you might need this." He held out a small potted plant, a cluster of delicate mountain columbine. "To brighten the place up." The gesture caught her off guard. "That's very thoughtful, thank you." She accepted the plant, their fingers brushing momentarily. "It's nothing." He shifted his weight, suddenly seeming less sure of himself than the confident rancher she'd observed in the store. "Just thought a lady might appreciate something pretty in her space." Willow placed the plant on the small windowsill where it would catch the morning sun. "It's perfect. I don't believe I've seen this flower before." "Colorado columbine. State flower, grows wild in the meadows up by my ranch." He seemed to be searching for something else to say, finally settling on, "I've got some shirts that could use mending if you're taking on more work, of course. Bring them by the store tomorrow and I'll add them to my queue." He nodded, replacing his hat. "Well, good night then, Miss Hayes." "Good night, Mr. Keller." After he left, Willow found herself touching the soft purple petals of the columbine, wondering what had prompted such a gesture from a man she barely knew. The next morning, true to his word, Henry appeared at her workstation with a bundle of shirts. "Nothing urgent," he assured her. "Whenever you can get to them." She noticed he'd taken special care with his appearance today. His hair was neatly combed, his face freshly shaved. "I should have them done by the end of the week. Much obliged." He lingered, watching as she measured and marked a dress pattern for the banker's wife. "You're good at that." "I've had years of practice," she replied, concentrating on her work rather than the intensity of his gaze. "Where'd you learn?" if you don't mind my asking." Willow hesitated, the chalk pausing on the fabric. "Back east. My mother taught me initially, and then I apprenticed with a dressmaker in Boston. Long way from Boston to Animas Forks." She resumed her measuring. "Yes, it is." Henry seemed to sense her reluctance to elaborate. "Well, I won't keep you from your work. Good day, Miss Hayes." As he left, Willow noticed Tom Jenkins watching from behind the counter with undisguised interest. The older man winked at her, and she felt a blush creep up her neck. It wouldn't do to have people speculating about her and Henry Keller. She had come here to escape notice, not to attract it. Yet, when she unpacked Henry's shirts later that day, she couldn't help but notice they smelled of pine and open air, so different from the coal dust and sweat that permeated the miner's clothing. She found herself taking extra care with the repairs, her needle creating neat, even stitches along the torn seams. July bloomed hot and dry in the mountains. Willow's business thrived as she expanded from simple repairs to creating new garments. Women in town came to her for dresses and children's clothing, while the men appreciated her sturdy work on their worn items. She began setting aside a small portion of her earnings, dreaming of someday opening her own shop. Henry Keller became a regular visitor, always with some small repair needed or a commission for new work. Sometimes he brought her little gifts, fresh berries from the mountains, a piece of pretty quartz, once even a book of poetry he'd ordered from Denver. Each time he lingered a bit longer, their conversations growing easier, though Willow carefully steered them away from any mention of her past. One evening in late July, as Willow was closing up her workspace, Henry appeared in the doorway. "Miss Hayes, I was wondering if you might join me for supper at the hotel restaurant. They've got a new cook who makes a fair chicken and dumplings." The invitation shouldn't have surprised her, yet it did. "Mr. Keller, Henry, please." "After all this time, I think we can dispense with formalities." She smiled despite herself. "Henry, then, I'm not sure that would be appropriate. It's just supper, Miss Hayes, in a public place with plenty of witnesses to ensure my good behavior." His eyes crinkled with humor. "Unless you're worried about your reputation being seen with a rough rancher like myself." "Willow," she corrected softly. "And no, that's not my concern." Then what is? How could she explain, without revealing too much, that she hadn't come to Animas Forks looking for attachments of any kind? That getting close to anyone meant questions she couldn't answer? "I came here to work, Mr. Henry, not to socialize." "All work and no pleasure makes for a dull existence," he countered. "One meal, that's all I'm asking." Perhaps it was the warmth in his eyes or simply her own loneliness after months of keeping everyone at arm's length, but Willow found herself nodding. One meal. The hotel restaurant was crowded that evening, filled with miners flush with their weekly pay and traveling salesmen passing through town. Henry had secured a small table near the window, and he stood when she entered, pulling out her chair with a courtesy that seemed at odds with the rough and tumble setting. "You look lovely," he said as she settled across from him. Willow had changed from her work dress into her second-best gown, a deep blue cotton that brought out the color in her eyes. "Thank you." She unfolded her napkin, suddenly nervous. How long had it been since she'd shared a meal with anyone other than herself? The waitress brought them water and took their orders, chicken and dumplings for both, as Henry had recommended. When she left, an awkward silence fell. "Tell me about your ranch," Willow prompted, searching for safe conversation. Henry's face lit up. "It's not much compared to some, but it's mine. About 500 acres, mostly for grazing. I raise horses, primarily quarter horses for working cattle, and a few thoroughbreds I'm training for racing. Got about 30 head of cattle too, but that's more for our own use than for selling. Me and my foreman, Luis Rodriguez. His wife, Maria, keeps house, and there are 3 ranch hands who help with the horses and cattle." "It sounds wonderful," Willow said, genuinely interested. "I've never been on a ranch before. You should visit sometime." Maria would love another woman to talk to, and the view from the main house is something to behold. You can see clear across the valley to the mountains beyond. The idea was tempting, but Willow hesitated. Perhaps someday. Their food arrived, steaming and fragrant. The dumplings were indeed excellent, light and fluffy atop the rich chicken stew. For a while they ate in companionable silence. "May I ask you something, Willow?" Henry finally said, setting down his fork. She tensed, anticipating questions about her past. "You may ask, I might not answer." He smiled at that. "Fair enough. I was just wondering why you chose Animas Forks. Of all the places in the West, why here?" It seemed an innocent enough question. "I saw an advertisement in a Boston newspaper, opportunities in the West for those willing to work." Animas Forks was listed among the growing mining towns. "I chose it because it was far from Boston, yet established enough that a seamstress might find work." "And have you found what you were looking for?" Willow considered the question. Had she? She had found work, yes, and a measure of independence she'd never known before. But peace, that remained elusive. "I'm finding my way," she answered honestly. Henry nodded, seeming to understand more than she'd said. "Well, I'm glad your way led you here." The rest of the meal passed pleasantly, with Henry sharing stories of ranch life and the characters he'd encountered in his years in Colorado. He had a gift for storytelling, painting vivid pictures with his words that made Willow laugh more than once. By the time they finished their coffee, Willow realized she'd enjoyed herself more than she had in years. "Thank you for joining me," Henry said as they stood to leave. "Would you allow me to walk you home? It's just across the street and down the alley," she pointed out. "All the same, I'd like to see you safely there." The night was warm, stars brilliant overhead in the clear mountain air. They walked slowly, neither seeming eager to end the evening. "You're a mystery, Willow Hayes," Henry said as they reached her door. "Every time I think I'm beginning to understand you, I realize there's so much more I don't know." "Perhaps that's for the best," she replied softly. He studied her face in the moonlight. "Is it? What are you running from?" The directness of the question caught her off guard. "What makes you think I'm running from anything?" "The way you guard your words. The sadness that comes into your eyes sometimes when you think no one is watching. The fact that a woman of your refinement and education has chosen to live alone in a mining town hundreds of miles from civilization." Willow turned away, fumbling with her key. "You're imagining things, Mr. Keller," he caught her hand gently. "No, I don't believe I am, but I won't press you. Just know that whatever brought you here, you're safe now." If only that were true, she thought, but managed to smile. "Good night, Henry." "Thank you for dinner." "Good night, Willow. Sweet dreams." She closed the door behind her, leaning against it as she listened to his footsteps fade away. Henry Keller was dangerous not because he meant her harm, but because he made her want to trust again, to believe in the possibility of sharing her burdens rather than carrying them alone. And that was a luxury she couldn't afford. August brought scorching days and the occasional violent thunderstorm that sent miners scurrying from the hillsides for fear of lightning strikes. Willow's little room became stifling in the heat, and she often worked with the window wide open, hoping to catch any stray breeze. Henry continued to visit, bringing her work and small gifts, but never pressuring her for more than she was willing to give of herself. Their conversations remained light, though sometimes she caught him watching her with questions in his eyes. One particularly hot afternoon, as Willow was finishing a dress for the mayor's daughter, the shop door burst open and a young woman stumbled in, her face streaked with tears and dust. "Please," she gasped. "I need help." Willow set aside her sewing and rushed forward as the woman swayed on her feet. "Sit down before you fall," she urged, guiding her to a chair. "Tom, some water, please." Jenkins hurried over with a dipper of fresh water from the barrel. The woman gulped it gratefully. "What's happened?" Willow asked, noting the bruises on the woman's wrists and the way she held herself as if in pain. "My husband," she broke off, fresh tears spilling. "I can't go back. He'll kill me this time for sure." "You're safe here," Willow assured her, though she knew how hollow such promises could be. "What's your name?" "Sarah Tanner. My husband's a miner, works the Blue Diamond claim." She clutched Willow's hand. "You don't understand. He'll come looking for me. He always does." The fear in the woman's eyes was all too familiar to Willow. "Tom, is there somewhere Sarah could rest?" Jenkins scratched his head. "Well, I suppose she could use the storeroom for a bit." "No," Willow interrupted. "Somewhere else. Somewhere her husband wouldn't think to look." Understanding dawned on the shopkeeper's face. "I'll send my boy to fetch Sheriff Dalton. He can sort this out." "No sheriff," Sarah cried. "Frank's friendly with all the lawmen. They'll just tell him where I am." Willow made a quick decision. "She can stay with me tonight. Tomorrow we'll figure something more permanent." Jenkins looked doubtful. "Miss Hayes, getting involved in another man's marriage troubles is precisely what any decent person would do," she finished firmly. "Sarah, can you walk a little farther? My room is just behind the shop." The woman nodded, though she winced as she stood. Willow supported her weight as they made their way through the store to her small living quarters. Once inside, she helped Sarah sit on the bed and began examining her injuries more carefully. "He did this to you?" she asked, noting the pattern of bruises that suggested fingers gripping too tightly, fists connecting with soft flesh. "Yes." Sarah's voice was barely audible. "It's been getting worse. Today he—" She trailed off, unable to continue. "You don't need to explain." Willow dampened a cloth and gently cleaned the dirt and blood from Sarah's face. "You can stay here as long as you need to. I don't want to cause trouble for you. You're not." Willow's voice was steady, though her hands trembled slightly as she worked. "Rest now. I'll bring you something to eat later." When she returned to her workstation, she found Henry waiting, his expression concerned. "Tom told me what happened," he said quietly. "Is she all right?" "She will be, with time and safety." Willow resumed her sewing, though her mind was elsewhere. "Frank Tanner's got a reputation," Henry warned. "He won't take kindly to someone interfering with what he considers his property." Willow's needle stabbed through the fabric with more force than necessary. "A woman is not property, Mr. Keller. I agree completely." "But Tanner doesn't see it that way." He leaned closer, lowering his voice. "Willow, this could be dangerous. Let me help." She looked up at him, surprised. "How? I could take her to my ranch." "It's far enough from town that Tanner wouldn't think to look there, and Louis and Maria would ensure she's safe." The offer was generous and tempting. "Why would you do that?" Something flickered in Henry's eyes. "Because it's the right thing to do, and because I can see this matters to you." Willow considered the options. Her tiny room was hardly adequate for 2 people, and if Tanner came looking, there would be nowhere to hide. "Let me speak with Sarah. It should be her choice." When Willow presented the idea to Sarah, the woman was hesitant at first. "How do I know I can trust this rancher?" "Henry Keller is a good man," Willow assured her, surprised by how certain she felt of this. "He's offering you protection, not asking anything in return." Sarah studied Willow's face. "You care for him?" "He's a friend," Willow said quickly, though the word seemed inadequate for what Henry was becoming to her. "I had a friend once," Sarah mused, "before Frank, someone who would have helped me if I'd asked." She sighed deeply. "I'll go to the ranch, but what about after? I can't hide forever." "One day at a time," Willow counseled. "First, let's get you somewhere safe." Henry arranged for Sarah to leave town discreetly that evening, hidden in the back of his supply wagon beneath a canvas cover. "Louis will drive her," he explained to Willow. "I'll stay in town tonight, might draw less attention that way." "Thank you," Willow said, meaning it with every fiber of her being. "I don't know how to repay you for this kindness. No repayment necessary." He hesitated, then added, "Though I wouldn't object to your company for another dinner soon." Despite the seriousness of the situation, Willow found herself smiling. "I think that could be arranged." The plan went smoothly. Louis collected Sarah after dark, and the wagon slipped out of town without incident. Henry, true to his word, took a room at the hotel where he could be seen by anyone looking for Sarah's accomplices. The following afternoon, Frank Tanner burst into the general store, his face flushed with anger and alcohol. "Where is she?" he demanded, scanning the shop until his gaze landed on Willow at her sewing machine. "Who are you looking for, Mr. Tanner?" Tom Jenkins asked innocently, though he placed himself between the miner and Willow's corner, my wife. Word is she came running in here yesterday. Tanner pushed past Jenkins, approaching Willow with menace in every step. You helped her, didn't you? Willow set aside her work, keeping the sewing table between them. I help many people, Mr. Tanner. It's my job. Don't play smart with me, woman. He slammed his fist on the table, making her jump. Where's Sarah? I suggest you lower your voice and step back, came Henry's calm directive from the shop entrance. Tanner whirled to face the new threat. This ain't your business, Keller. You're threatening a lady in a public establishment. That makes it my business. Henry hadn't moved from the doorway, but there was a dangerous stillness about him that made Tanner hesitate. She helped my wife run off, Tanner accused. Did she? Henry's tone was conversational now. Strange. Miss Hayes was sewing at my ranch all afternoon yesterday, making curtains for the main house. Isn't that right, Miss Hayes? Willow caught on immediately. Yes, that's correct. I returned to town this morning. Tanner looked between them, suspicion warring with uncertainty. You're lying. I have 6 ranch hands who can verify Miss Hayes' presence, Henry said smoothly. Now, I suggest you go home and sober up. If your wife has left you, perhaps you should consider why. For a moment, it seemed Tanner might lunge at Henry, but something in the rancher's steady gaze made him reconsider. This ain't over, he muttered, but he backed away and stormed out of the shop. The tension in the room dissipated with his exit. Thank you, Willow said, surprised to find her hands shaking now that the confrontation had passed. That was quick thinking. Not entirely untrue, Henry replied with a small smile. I would very much like you to visit the ranch someday. He grew serious again. Tanner will be back once he realizes Sarah isn't going to return on her own. It might be wise for you to stay elsewhere for a few days. I can't leave my work, bring it with you, he suggested. The ranch house has plenty of space, and as I mentioned, Maria would welcome the company. The idea of leaving town, even temporarily, made Willow uneasy. Her room at the back of the general store had become a sanctuary of sorts, the first place since leaving Boston that felt like her own. Yet the thought of Frank Tanner's rage being directed at her was equally unsettling. Just until things calm down, Henry added, seeming to sense her reluctance. A few days at most. Willow glanced at Tom Jenkins, who nodded encouragingly. Go on, Miss Hayes. I can mind the store and your customers will understand. Better safe than sorry with a man like Tanner. Very well, she conceded. When would we leave? First light tomorrow, Henry said. I'll come for you. That night, as Willow packed a small bag with her essential belongings and the work she could transport, she found herself both nervous and oddly excited at the prospect of seeing Henry's ranch. It would be her first time venturing beyond the boundaries of Animas Forks since her arrival months ago. Sleep proved elusive, her mind filled with worries about Sarah, about Tanner's threats, and increasingly about Henry Keller and the growing connection between them that she could no longer deny. By the time dawn broke, painting the mountains gold, Willow had resigned herself to the fact that her carefully constructed isolation was crumbling, and she wasn't entirely sure she wanted to rebuild its walls. Henry arrived precisely at sunrise, driving a small buggy rather than the supply wagon. Good morning, he greeted her, helping her with her bags. Sleep well? Well enough, she fibbed, settling beside him on the seat. The journey to the K-Bar K took just over an hour, following a winding road that climbed out of the mining valley into greener pastures. As they crested a final hill, the ranch spread before them a substantial log house surrounded by several outbuildings, corrals filled with horses, and beyond, acres of grazing land stretching to distant pine forests. It's beautiful, Willow breathed, taking in the panoramic view. Henry's face reflected his pride in the place. It was raw land when I bought it. Took 2 years just to get the main house built and the first corral fenced. You've accomplished a great deal in 5 years. It's amazing what a man can do when he has a purpose. He guided the horses down the slope toward the ranch house, and when he's trying to outrun his own past. The comment caught Willow by surprise. "What do you mean?" Henry gave her a sidelong glance. "We all have things we'd rather leave behind, Willow. You're not the only one who came west looking for a fresh start." Before she could respond, they were pulling up to the house, and a middle-aged Mexican woman was hurrying down the porch steps to greet them. "Señor Henry, you're back." She turned her warm smile on Willow. "And you must be Miss Hayes. Welcome, welcome. Sarah told us you were her angel of mercy. Maria, this is Willow Hayes." Henry made the formal introduction. "Willow Maria Rodriguez, the best cook in Colorado Territory and the real boss of this ranch, though she lets me think I'm in charge." Maria laughed, a rich, joyful sound. Come inside, come inside. I have coffee brewing and biscuits just out of the oven." The interior of the ranch house was far more refined than Willow had expected. The large main room featured comfortable furniture, bookshelves filled with volumes, and colorful woven rugs covering the plank floors. Windows on 3 sides flooded the space with morning light and provided stunning views of the surrounding landscape. "Your home is lovely," Willow told Henry sincerely. "Maria's doing," he replied. "I was living like a savage until she arrived and civilized the place." "Pa, men," Maria waved a dismissive hand. "Miss Hayes, let me show you to your room. You must be tired after your journey." The guest room was spacious and airy, with a large bed covered in a handmade quilt and a writing desk positioned to take advantage of the view. A vase of wildflowers sat on the nightstand, their bright colors a cheerful welcome. "Sarah is in the room across the hall," Maria informed her. "She's still sleeping. The poor child was exhausted. When you're ready, come down for breakfast." Left alone, Willow went to the window, gazing out at the mountains that surrounded the valley. From this vantage point, Animas Forks was invisible, as if it had never existed. The sensation was both liberating and disorienting, like stepping into another life, one where she might actually belong. Downstairs, she found Henry alone in the dining room, a cup of coffee in his hand and a newspaper spread before him. He rose when she entered. "Maria had to step out to the garden," he explained, pulling out a chair for her. "Help yourself to breakfast. It's all laid out on the sideboard." The spread was impressive: fluffy biscuits, scrambled eggs, bacon, and a bowl of preserved peaches. Willow realized she was ravenous and filled her plate generously. "This is wonderful," she said after her first bite. "I've been living on my own cooking for months, and I'm afraid I'm not very accomplished in the kitchen." "One of Maria's many talents," Henry agreed, watching her with evident pleasure. "She keeps trying to teach me, but I'm a hopeless case." "I find that hard to believe. You seem to succeed at whatever you set your mind to. Not everything." Something in his tone made her look up from her plate. His eyes, warm and intent, held hers. Some goals prove more challenging than others. The moment stretched between them, full of unspoken meanings. Willow was the first to look away, her cheeks warming. "How is Sarah settling in?" she asked, deliberately changing the subject. If Henry was disappointed by the deflection, he didn't show it. As well as can be expected. She was quite shaken when she arrived, but Maria has a way of making people feel safe. Lewis has assigned one of the ranch hands to keep watch, just in case Tanner gets any ideas about searching beyond town. "Do you think he might come here?" "Unlikely. As far as I know, Tanner and I have never exchanged more than a dozen words. He has no reason to connect me to Sarah's disappearance." "Unless someone saw her leaving town in your wagon." Henry conceded the point with a nod. "A possibility, but a remote one. The wagon left after dark and Lewis took the back road." He reached across the table, briefly touching her hand. "Try not to worry, you're safe here." The simple contact sent a current through Willow that had nothing to do with fear or worry. She withdrew her hand, busying herself with her breakfast. "What do you normally do with your days here?" she asked, hoping to restore the casual tone of their conversation. "There's always work to be done," he replied, accepting the change in subject. "Horses to train, cattle to tend, fences to mend. Today I need to check on a mare that's about to foal." Would you like to come along? It's not often we get to witness new life entering the world. The invitation was unexpected but welcome. I'd like that very much. After breakfast, Henry led her to the stables where a beautiful chestnut mare stood in a large stall bedded deeply with clean straw. The horse's sides were distended, and she shifted restlessly, clearly uncomfortable. "This is Duchess," Henry introduced, his voice soft as he approached the animal. "She's one of my best brood mares. This will be her third foal." Willow stayed back, uncertain. "I've never been this close to a horse before." Henry looked surprised. "Never. Well, she's gentle as they come. Would you like to say hello?" At Willow's hesitant nod, he motioned her forward. "Hold your hand flat, palm up. Let her catch your scent first." Willow did as instructed, her heart pounding as the large animal stretched her neck forward, velvety nostrils flaring as she sniffed Willow's hand. Then, to her delight, the mare gently butted her head against Willow's palm. "She likes you," Henry said, smiling. "Horses are excellent judges of character." "She's beautiful," Willow whispered, cautiously stroking the mare's forehead. "When will the foal come?" "Soon. Maybe today, maybe tomorrow. We'll check on her throughout the day." They spent the morning moving between the ranch house and the stables, Henry attending to his work while keeping a watchful eye on Duchess. Willow had brought some mending with her and sat on the porch, enjoying the fresh mountain air as she worked. Sarah joined her after a while, looking much improved after a night of restful sleep. "Thank you," she said simply, taking the chair beside Willow. "For everything? You don't need to thank me. Anyone would have done the same." Sarah shook her head. "No, they wouldn't. Most folks in town look the other way. Frank's got friends, and I'm just a woman who should know her place." Willow's hands stilled on her sewing. "No woman's place is beneath a man's fist. You understand," Sarah said softly. "Some women I've tried to talk to, they say I must have done something to deserve it, or that it's a wife's duty to endure. They're wrong." Willow's voice was fierce with conviction. "No one deserves to be hurt by someone who claims to love them." Sarah studied her face. "You speak from experience." It wasn't a question, but Willow answered anyway, the words escaping before she could stop them. "Yes. Your husband?" "No." Willow swallowed hard, surprised to find herself on the verge of confiding in this near stranger when she'd kept her secrets so carefully guarded. "My father." The admission hung in the air between them. Sarah reached over and covered Willow's hand with her own. "I'm sorry." "It was a long time ago." Willow resumed her sewing, though her fingers trembled slightly. "And it's in the past now. Is it? Or is that why you came west, to escape?" Before Willow could answer, Henry's voice called from the stables. "Willow, Sarah, Duchess is in labor." Grateful for the interruption, Willow set aside her work and followed Sarah to the stables. Inside, they found Henry kneeling in the straw beside the mare, who was now lying on her side, sides heaving with contractions. "It's happening quickly," he told them, his focus entirely on the horse. "The first foal's legs are visible already." Willow and Sarah kept a respectful distance, watching in awe as nature took its course. Within an hour, a gangly foal was struggling to its feet, wobbling on impossibly long legs while its mother nickered encouragingly. "A colt," Henry announced proudly. "And a strong one at that." The newborn found its way to its mother's side and began nursing, its tiny tail swishing with satisfaction. Willow felt unexpected tears prick her eyes at the simple beauty of the seen new life, untouched by the complications and sorrows of the world. "He's perfect," she whispered. Henry moved to stand beside her, his shoulder brushing hers as they watched the mare and foal together. "Life has a way of renewing itself," he said quietly. "No matter what came before, there's always the possibility of something new, something untarnished." Willow wondered if he was speaking of more than just the horse. "What will you name him?" Henry considered for a moment, then smiled. "How about tomorrow, since that's what he represents?" "Tomorrow," she repeated, liking the sound of it. "A fine name for a fine colt." They dined together that evening, Henry, Willow, Sarah, and the Rodriguez family around the large table in the ranch house dining room. The conversation flowed easily. with Louis sharing amusing tales of ranch mishaps and Maria teasing Henry about his bachelor ways. For the first time in longer than she could remember, Willow felt part of something, connected to these people in a way that went beyond mere politeness or business transactions. After dinner, as Maria cleared the dishes despite Willow's offers to help, Henry suggested a walk to watch the sunset from the ridge above the house. Sarah declined, claiming fatigue, but gave Willow an encouraging smile that suggested she understood more than had been spoken. The evening air was cool and fragrant with pine as they climbed the gentle slope behind the ranch house. Wildflowers dotted the meadow grasses, splashes of purple and gold in the fading light. "I've always loved this time of day," Henry commented as they reached the crest of the ridge. "The world seems to hold its breath for a moment before surrendering to night." Below them, the ranch buildings were softened by lengthening shadows, smoke curling from the chimney of the main house. Beyond, the valley stretched away to the mountains, which were now painted in shades of rose and gold by the setting sun. "It's magnificent," Willow said, wrapping her shawl more tightly around her shoulders as a breeze stirred the grasses. "I can see why you chose this place." "When I first saw this valley, I knew I was home." Henry's voice held a note of wonder still, as if the realization remained fresh. "I'd spent years drifting, never staying anywhere long enough to put down roots, but something about this land spoke to me, said this is where you belong." Willow envied him that certainty. "What made you drift for so long?" He was quiet for a moment, gazing out at the mountains. "War has a way of unsettling a man's soul," he finally said. "After Appomattox, I couldn't bear to return to Kentucky. Too many ghosts. Too many memories of friends who wouldn't be coming home." "You fought for the Union," Willow guessed, noting his mention of Kentucky, a border state torn between North and South. "Yes, my father owned a small horse farm outside Lexington. He was a Unionist, though many of our neighbors sided with the Confederacy." His expression darkened. "When I enlisted, it didn't sit well with some. While I was away fighting, raiders burned our stables with all the horses inside. My father tried to save them and was killed. Henry, I'm so sorry." Willow couldn't imagine the pain of such a homecoming. He shrugged, though the casualness of the gesture was belied by the tension in his jaw. "It was a long time ago, but afterward I couldn't stay. Sold what was left of the farm and headed west. Worked as a ranch hand, a mustanger, even tried my hand at mining for a spell. Nothing felt right until I found this place. And now you've built something wonderful here. Your father would be proud." Henry turned to face her fully, the dying sunlight gilding his features. "What about you, Willow? What are you running from?" The direct question, coming after his own honesty, deserved a truthful answer. Yet the words stuck in her throat, lodged behind years of silence and shame. "You don't have to tell me," he added softly, seeing her struggle. "But I want you to know that nothing you say could change how I feel about you." "And how was that?" She wanted to ask, but fear held her back. "My past is ugly, Henry. Then we'll paint tomorrow together," he said simply, reaching for her hand. The words, so unexpected yet so perfect, broke something loose inside her. "My father was a respected businessman in Boston," she began, the story spilling out after being contained for so long. "Respected in public at least. At home he was a tyrant. My mother bore the brunt of his rages until she died when I was 12. After that, I became his primary target." Henry's hand tightened around hers, but he remained silent, letting her continue. He was careful, always striking where the bruises wouldn't show. Always apologizing afterward, bringing gifts, promising to change. Willow's voice hardened. "He never changed. When I was 21, he arranged a marriage for me to a business associate 30 years my senior, a widower with a reputation for cruelty to his first wife." "You refused," Henry guessed. "I tried. Father became violent, more so than usual. I feared for my life that night." She took a deep breath. "I struck back with a fire poker. I didn't mean to, I just wanted him to stop." Henry's expression showed no shock, no judgment, only a deep sorrow. "Did you kill him?" No, but I injured him severely. While he was recovering, I took what money I could find in his study and fled. I've been running ever since, afraid he'd send someone after me or that the authorities would. That was 2 years ago, Willow nodded. I changed my name. Hayes was my mother's maiden name. I worked my way west, staying nowhere long enough to be remembered, until Animas Forks. Why stay here? Henry asked gently. I was tired of running, and something about this place, perhaps I felt the same thing you did, a sense of belonging despite everything. She looked up at him, vulnerability plain in her eyes. Now you know, I'm a fugitive, Henry, a woman who assaulted her own father and stole from him. I see a woman who defended herself against a monster, he corrected firmly. A woman of extraordinary courage who refused to be a victim any longer. The acceptance in his voice nearly undid her. You can't know that, you weren't there. I know you, Willow Hayes. These past months I've seen your kindness, your integrity, your strength. Those aren't the qualities of someone who would resort to violence without extreme provocation. Tears blurred her vision as the last rays of sunlight faded from the mountains. I've lived in fear for so long, fear that he'd find me, fear that anyone who knew the truth would turn away in disgust. I'm not turning away, Henry said, his voice steady and sure. He reached up, gently brushing a tear from her cheek. And I'm not letting anyone hurt you again. The tenderness of the gesture undid the last of Willow's resolve. She stepped into his embrace, burying her face against his shoulder as silent tears gave way to deep, wrenching sobs, the release of years of pent-up terror and loneliness. Henry held her without speaking, one hand stroking her hair, the other a solid presence at her back. When the storm of emotion finally passed, Willow remained in the circle of his arms, unwilling to break the first genuine connection she'd allowed herself in years. Better? He asked softly, his breath warm against her hair. Yes, she drew back slightly, embarrassed by her breakdown. I'm sorry, don't apologize, not for this, not ever. In the deepening twilight, his face was mostly in shadow, but she could feel the intensity of his gaze. Slowly, giving her every chance to pull away, Henry lowered his head until his lips met hers in a kiss so gentle it made her heart ache with longing for all the tenderness she'd been denied. When they parted, breathless and trembling, the first stars were appearing in the darkening sky above them. Henry rested his forehead against hers. I've wanted to do that since the first day I saw you in Jenkins' store, he confessed. Willow laughed softly, surprised by the joy bubbling up through the emotional wreckage of moments before. That long, longer it feels like. As if I was waiting for you before I even knew you existed. The sentiment was too profound to dismiss as mere romantic exaggeration. Willow felt it too, this sense of recognition, of finding someone whose broken places matched her own. I think we should head back, she suggested reluctantly. Before it gets too dark to find the path. Henry nodded, though he seemed as unwilling as she to break the spell of the moment. He kept her hand in his as they made their way down the ridge toward the welcoming lights of the ranch house. Will you stay? He asked as they neared the porch. Not just for a few days, stay here with me. The question caught Willow off guard. Henry, I know it's sudden, he hurried on, and I don't expect an answer tonight, but I want you to know that there's a place for you here if you want it. A future. A future. The concept seemed foreign after so long living day to day, looking over her shoulder. What about my work in town? You could set up a proper shop here at the ranch. There are enough nearby homesteads and small ranches to keep you busy. Or we could build you a shop in town and you could travel back and forth. He smiled, lifting her hand to his lips. We'll figure it out together if that's what you want. Did she want it? The question seemed almost absurd in its simplicity. Of course she wanted it, wanted him, wanted this place, wanted the sense of peace and purpose she'd found here. But fear still whispered in the back of her mind. What if her father was still searching? What if he found her? What if this happiness was just another illusion destined to shatter? I need time, she said finally. To think, to be sure, Henry nodded, understanding in his eyes. Take all the time you need, I'm not going anywhere. The following days at the ranch fell into a pleasant rhythm. Willow divided her time between working on her sewing, helping Maria in the kitchen, and joining Henry for rides around the property on a gentle mare he'd selected especially for her. Sarah, too, seemed to blossom in the peaceful environment, though she remained anxious about her future. "I can't hide here forever," she confided to Willow one afternoon as they shelled peas on the porch. "But I don't know where to go. I have no family, no money of my own." "What did you do before you were married?" Willow asked. "I was a schoolteacher in Denver." A wistful smile crossed Sarah's face. "I loved it. The children, the books, watching young minds discover the world. Could you return to teaching?" "Perhaps. But Frank would find me if I stayed in Colorado." Sarah's hands stilled on the peas. "Sometimes I think about going to California. Starting fresh where no one knows me." "That would take money," Willow mused. "But it's not impossible. We could help." "We, Henry and I," Willow clarified, then blushed at the automatic pairing of their names, "and others in town who would want to help if they knew your situation." Sarah studied her friend's face. "You care for him very much, don't you?" "I do," Willow admitted, the truth of it settling comfortably in her heart. "More than I thought possible, and he's asked you to stay." Willow looked up, surprised. "How did you know?" Sarah laughed softly. "It's written all over his face whenever he looks at you. That man is deeply in love, Willow, love." The word hung in the air between them, both terrifying and exhilarating. "I'm afraid," Willow confessed. "Not of him, never of him, but of believing in a future only to have it snatched away." "That's the risk we all take," Sarah said gently. "But isn't the possibility of happiness worth it?" Before Willow could answer, the sound of approaching hoofbeats drew their attention. Luis Rodriguez was galloping up the drive, his expression grave as he dismounted. "Señorita Hayes," he called, striding toward the porch. "There's trouble in town. Tanner has been making threats, saying he'll burn down the general store if his wife isn't returned to him." Willow's blood ran cold. "Is everyone all right, for now?" "Sheriff Dalton has him locked up for drunk and disorderly, but he'll be released by morning. Senor Jenkins sent word that you should stay away until things settle down." "And Henry? Where is he?" Willow asked, suddenly realizing she hadn't seen him since breakfast. "He rode into town earlier to pick up supplies," Luis explained. "When he heard about Tanner's threats, he stayed to help keep watch on the store." Sarah had gone pale. "This is my fault. I should never have involved any of you." "No," Willow said firmly. "The fault lies entirely with your husband, his actions, his choices." Luis nodded agreement. "Senora Rodriguez says you should both stay close to the house today. I've posted Miguel and Juan to keep watch, just in case." The rest of the day passed in tense anticipation. Willow tried to focus on her sewing, but her thoughts kept returning to Henry in town, possibly facing danger on her behalf. By evening, when he still hadn't returned, her worry had grown into full-fledged fear. "Something's wrong," she told Maria as they prepared supper. "Henry should have been back by now. Luis would have heard if there was trouble," Maria reassured her. "The men in town know to send word." But Willow couldn't shake her unease. After a mostly untouched meal, she found herself pacing the porch, straining to hear hoofbeats in the growing darkness. When Luis joined her, his own expression concerned, she knew her fears weren't unfounded. "I'm going to town," she announced. "Something's happened, I'm sure of it." "It's not safe, señorita, especially not for you after helping Sarah escape." "I can't sit here doing nothing," Willow insisted. "Will you take me, or must I saddle a horse myself?" Luis recognized the determination in her voice. "I will take you, but we go carefully and you stay close to me." They set out in the buggy, Luis driving at a pace that seemed agonizingly slow to Willow, but was as fast as safety allowed on the dark mountain roads. The journey that had taken just over an hour in daylight stretched to nearly 2 in the darkness. As they approached Animas Forks, an orange glow lit the night sky above the town. "Fire," Luis said grimly, urging the horses to greater speed. Willow's heart pounded with dread. "The general store, we'll see soon enough." They crested the final hill to find Animas Forks in chaos. A building on the main street was fully engulfed in flames. townsfolk forming a bucket brigade from the nearby creek in a desperate attempt to prevent the fire from spreading. It wasn't the general store, Willow realized with relief as they drew closer. It was the Silverton Hotel where she had stayed upon first arriving in town. Lewis pulled the buggy to a halt at the edge of the commotion. "Stay here," he ordered. "I'll find out what happened." But Willow was already scanning the crowd for Henry's familiar figure. When she didn't see him, she climbed down from the buggy despite Lewis's protests and made her way toward the general store, which stood untouched several buildings away from the burning hotel. Tom Jenkins was outside, watching the firefighting efforts with a grim expression. He startled when Willow appeared at his side. "Miss Hayes, what in tarnation are you doing here? It ain't safe." "Where's Henry?" she demanded. "Lewis said he came to town this morning and never returned to the ranch." Jenkins's face fell. "Oh Lord, you don't know." Cold fear gripped Willow's heart. "Know what? Tom, tell me." "Tanner got released from jail this afternoon, drunk and raging. Came straight for the store looking for you and Sarah. Henry was here helping me board up the windows just in case. There was a confrontation. Henry's hurt." Willow interrupted, her voice rising with panic. "Not here." Jenkins took her arm, drawing her away from curious onlookers. They took it outside. Tanner pulled a knife. Henry defended himself, but they both went down. "Doc Simmons has Henry at his office." "Is he?" She couldn't form the words, terror closing her throat. "Alive, last I heard, but hurt bad." Jenkins glanced toward the burning hotel. "Then this started. I'm guessing one of Tanner's mining friends decided to cause a distraction. You need to be careful, Miss Hayes. Tanner's still out there, and he's blaming you for everything." Willow barely heard the warning, already moving toward the doctor's office at the end of the street. "Thank you, Tom. Please tell Lewis where I've gone." The doctor's house was set apart from the main street, a modest two-story building with a shingle reading J. Simmons, M.D. hanging beside the door. Willow knocked frantically, heedless of the late hour. A weary-looking middle-aged man opened the door. "Yes, Dr. Simmons." "I'm here about Henry Keller. Please, I need to see him." The doctor studied her for a moment, then nodded. "You must be Miss Hayes. He's been asking for you." He stepped back, allowing her to enter. "This way." He led her to a small room at the back of the house where Henry lay on a narrow bed, his face ashen against the white pillows. A bandage wrapped his torso, visible where the blanket had been folded down, and a smaller dressing covered a cut on his forehead. "Henry." Willow whispered, moving to his side, his eyes fluttered open, focusing slowly on her face. "Willow, what are you doing here? You should be safe at the ranch." "As if I could stay away when you were hurt." She took his hand, alarmed by the coolness of his skin. "What happened?" "Tanner," he said weakly. "Knife, got me once before I could stop him." Dr. Simmons spoke from the doorway. "The blade punctured his lung. I've done what I can, but he's lost a lot of blood. The next 24 hours will be critical." Willow fought back tears. "He'll be all right, though." "He'll recover." The doctor's hesitation was answer enough. "I've seen patients pull through worse," he said finally, "but he needs absolute rest and careful monitoring." "I'll stay with him," Willow declared, pulling a chair closer to the bed. "I won't leave his side, Doctor." Simmons nodded, recognizing the futility of argument. "Call me if there's any change." He left them alone, closing the door softly behind him. Willow pressed Henry's hand to her cheek. "You shouldn't have confronted Tanner, not for me." "Not just for you," Henry murmured. "For what's right." He winced as a spasm of pain crossed his features. "Did they catch him?" "I don't know. There's a fire at the hotel. It's causing quite a commotion in town." "Diversion," Henry muttered. "He's trying to slip away." "Don't worry about that now," Willow urged. "Just focus on healing." Henry's eyes, though clouded with pain, held hers intently. "Willow, listen. If something happens to me, nothing is going to happen to you," she interrupted fiercely. "I won't allow it." A faint smile touched his lips. "Stubborn woman, but hear me out. If the worst happens, the ranch is yours." "All of it? I made a will months ago." Shocked, Willow stared at him. "Why would you do that? You barely knew me then." "I knew enough," he said simply. "From the first moment, I knew you were the one I'd been waiting for. Everything I built was always meant for us to share." Tears spilled down Willow's cheeks. "You are not leaving me, Henry Keller, not now, not when I've only just found you." "Then give me something to fight for," he whispered. "Say you'll stay, say you'll be my wife." Through her tears, Willow found herself smiling. "Yes, of course, yes. I love you, Henry. I think I have since you brought me that columbine for my window." "I love you, Willow Hayes," he breathed, his eyes drifting closed. "More than life itself." "Then live for me," she pleaded, pressing a gentle kiss to his lips. "Live for our tomorrow." The night passed in agonizing slowness. Willow dozed fitfully in the chair beside Henry's bed, waking at every change in his breathing, every small sound. Dr. Simmons checked on them periodically, his expression growing more hopeful as dawn approached and Henry's color improved slightly. "His fever's down," the doctor noted during his early morning visit. "That's a good sign." "He'll recover?" Willow asked, desperate for reassurance. "I believe so, with proper care. The lung will heal given time. He's young and strong." Dr. Simmons patted her shoulder kindly. "You should get some real rest, Miss Hayes. There's a spare room upstairs you're welcome to use." "I promised I wouldn't leave him." "At least let me bring you some breakfast then. Can't have both my patients falling ill." While the doctor was gone, Luis Rodriguez arrived, his face grim with news. "Tanner escaped during the confusion of the fire," he reported. "Sheriff Dalton has a posse tracking him, but so far they've found nothing." "What about the ranch?" Willow asked. "Sarah, is she safe?" "Maria has her well hidden and the men are on alert. No one approaches without being seen." "Good." Willow glanced at Henry's sleeping form. "He'll need to be moved as soon as he's stable enough for travel." "He'll heal better at home, and I'd feel safer with him away from town while Tanner is still out there." Luis nodded approval. "You are thinking like Senor Henry now, practical, forward-looking." "I'm thinking like a woman who refuses to lose what she's found," Willow corrected softly. "Will you stay in town? Keep watch while I tend to Henry." "Of course, señorita. Nothing will get past me." For 3 days, Henry remained in Dr. Simmons' care, gradually regaining strength. Willow never left the doctor's house, dividing her time between Henry's bedside and helping Mrs. Simmons with household chores as a way to repay their kindness. News from town was unsettling, no sign of Tanner, and tensions running high among the miners, some of whom were friends of the fugitive and resentful of the outsiders they blamed for the trouble. On the 4th morning, Dr. Simmons declared Henry well enough to be moved, though he warned against the jolting journey by wagon. "Take it slow," he advised as Lewis and Tom Jenkins carefully helped Henry into the back of the supply wagon, which had been padded with blankets and hay for the trip. "Stop if he shows any signs of distress. The wound is healing well, but that lung needs time." Willow sat beside Henry in the wagon bed, his head cradled in her lap. "Thank you for everything, Doctor. I don't know how we can ever repay you." Dr. Simmons waved away her gratitude. "Just send word when you're ready for that wedding. Mrs. Simmons and I wouldn't miss it for the world." The journey back to the ranch took the better part of the day, Lewis driving with painstaking care to avoid jostling his injured employer. Henry slept through much of it, the laudanum doctor. Simmons had administered before their departure, keeping him comfortable. As they approached the ranch house, Willow saw Maria and Sarah waiting anxiously on the porch. The moment the wagon stopped, they rushed forward to help. "Oh, my poor Senor Henry," Maria fussed, directing the men as they carried him inside. "Bring him to his room. I have everything prepared." The main bedroom at the end of the upstairs hall was spacious and airy, dominated by a large bed that Maria had already turned down, fresh linens gleaming white in the afternoon sun. Once Henry was settled, the housekeeper shooed everyone but Willow from the room. "You need anything, you call," Maria instructed. "I'll bring up some broth for when he wakes." Left alone with Henry, Willow sank into the chair beside the bed, the events of the past days catching up with her in a rush of exhaustion. She must have dozed off, for the next thing she knew, Henry was watching her, his eyes clearer than they had been since his injury. "You look tired," he observed, his voice weak but steady. Willow moved from the chair to sit on the edge of the bed. How do you feel? Like I've been trampled by a herd of cattle. He attempted a smile, though it turned to a grimace as he shifted position. But better for seeing you. Are we home? Yes. Lewis drove very carefully. Dr. Simmons says you're healing well, but you need to rest. Henry reached for her hand. Stay with me, always, she promised. I love you, Henry Keller. Love you too, he murmured, eyes already drifting closed again. My Willow. Over the next week, Henry regained strength gradually. Willow divided her time between nursing him and helping Maria run the household. Finding unexpected joy in the domestic tasks she'd never imagined herself embracing. Sarah, too, seemed to have found a purpose in assisting with the ranch accounts, her training as a teacher making her adept with figures. News from town arrived sporadically. The Silverton Hotel was a total loss, though thankfully no lives had been lost in the fire. Tanner remained at large, with rumors suggesting he'd fled to the mining camps further north. Sheriff Dalton had called off the active search, but promised to keep an eye out for the fugitive. As August gave way to September, a letter arrived from Boston that threw Willow's newly found peace into turmoil. It was forwarded by Tom Jenkins, who had been holding it at the store for weeks, unsure whether to send it on. The envelope bore her real name, Willow Harrington, and the return address of her father's law firm. With trembling hands, she opened it in the privacy of the guest room that was still nominally hers, though she had taken to sleeping in Henry's room, propriety be damned. Inside was a brief note from her father's attorney, informing her of Reginald Harrington's death from apoplexy 3 months prior. As his sole heir, she was requested to return to Boston to settle his estate, which was described as substantial. Enclosed was a second letter, sealed separately. With even greater trepidation, Willow broke the seal to find her father's handwriting, the once bold strokes now tremulous with age or illness. "My dearest daughter," it began, a salutation so at odds with the man she remembered that she nearly stopped reading there. But something compelled her to continue. "If you are reading this, I am gone from this world, perhaps to a better one, though I doubt it. A man like me has much to answer for in the hereafter. Chief among my sins is the way I treated you and your dear mother. There are no excuses I can offer, no justifications that would suffice. I was a monster in my home while presenting a saint's face to the world. The injury you inflicted before fleeing was no less than I deserved, and perhaps the only thing that finally broke through my madness. Know that I have made no effort to find you these past years. I wanted you to be free of me, to find whatever happiness you could. My only hope is that you are well, and that someday you might find it in your heart, if not to forgive, then at least to understand that I recognized my failures in the end. All that I have is yours. Use it better than I did." Your father, Reginald Harrington. Willow sat for a long time after reading the letter, tears streaming silently down her face. Not tears of grief for the father she had feared and hated, but for the complicated tangle of emotions his words had unleashed. Relief that he was gone. Vindication that he had admitted his wrongs. Bitterness that the admission came too late for it to matter. And most surprisingly, a small measure of peace. She found Henry on the porch, wrapped in a blanket despite the warmth of the September afternoon. He was still weak, but improving daily, insisting on leaving his sick for short periods to enjoy the fresh air. "What is it?" he asked, immediately noting her reddened eyes. "What's happened?" Wordlessly, she handed him the letters and sat beside him while he read. When he finished, he set them aside and took her hand. "Are you all right?" "I think so," she said slowly. "It's strange. I've spent so long running from him and now he's gone, just gone. Will you go back to settle the estate?" Willow considered the question. "I should, I suppose. There will be legal matters that require my presence, but I'm not staying in Boston. My life is here now. With you?" Henry brought her hand to his lips. "I'll go with you once I'm strong enough to travel. You do that, leave the ranch, for you, in a heartbeat. Besides, it's only temporary. We'll come home when it's done. Home. The word wrapped around Willow's heart like a warm embrace. This was home now, this man, this land, this life they were building together. There's something else, she said, a new thought occurring to her. Sarah. With this inheritance, I could help her start over in California like she's been dreaming of, Henry smiled. And that's why I love you, Willow Hayes, soon to be Keller. Your first thought is always for others. Not always, she corrected, leaning in to kiss him softly. Sometimes it's for us. For our future. For all the tomorrows we're going to paint together. 6 months later, on a perfect spring day in April 1877, Willow Hayes became Willow Keller in a ceremony performed on the ridge where they had shared their first kiss. The entire town of Animas Forks seemed to have turned out for the occasion, along with ranchers and homesteaders from miles around, all eager to celebrate the union of two people who had come to mean so much to the community. Willow wore a gown of ivory silk that she had designed and sewn herself, with Maria and Sarah's help. Henry, fully recovered from his injuries, cut a handsome figure in a new suit ordered from Denver for the occasion. They spoke their vows against a backdrop of mountains still capped with snow, the valley below already greening with the promise of renewal. "You are more beautiful than I ever imagined," Henry whispered as they walked back down the hill to where tables had been set up on the ranch house lawn for the wedding feast. Willow, happier than she had ever believed possible, squeezed his hand. "And you are every dream I never dared to dream." The celebration lasted well into the night, with music and dancing, food and laughter. Sarah Tanner, now preparing to leave for San Francisco with enough money from Willow's inheritance to start a new school, danced with one of the neighboring ranchers with a lightness in her step that suggested healing had begun. Frank Tanner had never returned to Animas Forks. Word eventually reached them that he had died in a mining accident further north, a cave in that, some said, was the result of his own carelessness, his skills deteriorated by drink and rage. As the last guests departed and the newlyweds stood on the porch of what was now truly their home, Henry wrapped his arms around his wife from behind, both of them gazing out at the star-filled sky. "Happy?" he asked, his breath warm against her ear. "Completely," she assured him, leaning back into his embrace. "Though I do have one piece of news I've been saving for this moment." He turned her gently to face him. "What is it?" Willow took his hand and placed it over her still flat stomach. "By Christmas, there will be 3 of us living in this house." Henry's expression transformed with wonder. "A baby, you're sure?" "Dr. Simmons confirmed it last week when we were in town. I wanted to wait until today to tell you." With a whoop of joy that startled the horses in the nearby corral, Henry lifted her in his arms, spinning them both in a circle before setting her carefully back on her feet. "A child," he marveled. "Our child." "The first of many, I hope," Willow said, laughing at his exuberance. "We have a lot of tomorrows to fill, after all. And we'll paint every one of them more beautiful than the last," Henry promised, sealing his words with a kiss that held all the tenderness, passion, and hope that had brought them to this moment. That night, as they lay in each other's arms in the bedroom that was now theirs alone, Willow reflected on the journey that had led her to this place, this man, this life. From the terror and pain of her past to the joy and promise of her future, every step, even the painful ones, had been necessary to bring her here. "What are you thinking about?" Henry asked, noting her thoughtful expression. "About how sometimes the darkest roads lead to the brightest destinations," she answered, tracing the scar on his chest from Tanner's knife, a permanent reminder of how close they had come to losing everything before it truly began. "And how love can be found in the most unexpected places. Like a rough mining town in the Colorado mountains," he suggested with a smile, "exactly like that." She nestled closer to him, content in a way she had never imagined possible. "I love you, Henry Keller. Thank you for showing me that my past doesn't have to define my future." "And I love you, Willow Keller. Thank you for proving that second chances are real and that it's never too late to begin again." Outside their window, the first stars of evening winked to life in the darkening sky, bearing silent witness to the promise of their joined lives. Together, they had faced the shadows of the past and emerged into the light of a future limited only by the breadth of their dreams. It was more than enough. It was everything. Years passed, seasons flowing one into another like the currents of the river that ran through the K-Bar-K land. The ranch prospered under Henry and Willow's care, expanding to include more cattle and the finest horses in Colorado territory. Their home grew as well, with the addition of a new wing to accommodate their growing family. Their firstborn, a son they named James after Henry's father, arrived right on schedule that Christmas, a strong, healthy boy with his mother's dark hair and his father's storm blue eyes. A daughter, Elizabeth, followed 18 months later, and another son, Daniel, 2 years after that. Willow's inheritance from her father had been put to good use, some to help Sarah start her new life in California, from where she wrote regularly of her successful school, and, eventually, of a new love with a kind widower who valued her independence and spirit. The rest of the money went into improvements for the ranch, and the establishment of a proper dressmaking shop in town, which Willow ran 2 days a week with the help of an apprentice, a young girl from one of the homesteading families who showed exceptional talent with a needle. Henry's prediction about Maria's delight in having children at the ranch proved accurate. The housekeeper doted on the Keller children as if they were her own grandchildren, teaching them Spanish lullabies and stuffing them with her special cinnamon cookies whenever Willow wasn't looking. Animas Forks changed too as the years passed. The silver boom eventually waned, but unlike many mining towns that became ghost towns when the ore ran out, Animas Forks had diversified enough to survive. Ranching and farming took hold in the valley, and the town settled into a quieter but sustainable existence. On a warm summer evening in 1885, as Willow sat on the porch swing watching her children play in the yard, Henry joined her, settling his arm comfortably around her shoulders. "I've been thinking," he began, in that tone that always signaled one of his grand ideas was brewing. "A dangerous pastime," she teased, leaning into his embrace. He grinned, unperturbed. "What would you think about opening a proper school here on the ranch? There are enough children in the surrounding homesteads now, and town is too far for most of them to travel daily." Willow considered the idea. "We'd need a teacher. I was thinking we might write to Sarah, see if she knows someone suitable. Or perhaps she might be interested in returning herself, now that her own children are grown." "It's a wonderful idea," Willow decided. "The old bunkhouse could be converted easily enough, now that the hands have the new quarters you built last year." Henry nodded, pleased by her enthusiasm. "I thought the same. We could have it ready by fall if we start soon." From the yard came the sound of childish laughter as James, now 7, chased his younger siblings around the oak tree Henry had planted the year they were married. The sight never failed to fill Willow's heart with gratitude for the life they had created together. "Do you ever think about how close we came to missing this?" she asked softly. "If I hadn't come to Animas Forks, if you hadn't walked into the general store that day." "I try not to," Henry admitted. "The thought of a life without you, without our children, it's unimaginable now." "Sometimes I wonder if it was fate," Willow mused. "All those choices, all those roads taken and not taken, leading us to each other." Henry pressed a kiss to her temple. "If it was fate, then I'm grateful for it. But I like to think we made our own destiny one choice at a time, beginning with you bringing me that columbine," he chuckled. "I was so nervous, thought for sure you'd think me forward." "I did," Willow confessed, "but I liked it. It was the first time in years someone had given me something simply to bring me joy, with no expectations attached." "Little did you know the expectations that would follow," he teased, gesturing toward their boisterous children. 3 of them, with possibly more to come. Willow smiled at the hint. At 32, she was still young enough for more children, though they had agreed to wait a bit before considering a 4th. "No regrets, though, not a single one." Henry's voice was firm with conviction. "Every challenge, every joy, Every moment shared with you has been a blessing beyond anything I could have imagined that day I first saw you in Tom Jenkins' store. As the sun dipped toward the mountains, painting the sky in shades of gold and rose, Willow thought of all the tomorrows they had already painted together and all those yet to come. The canvas of their life together was far from complete indeed. It expanded with each passing day, with each new dream they dared to dream. "I love you, Henry Keller," she said simply, the words no less powerful for having been spoken thousands of times over the years. "And I love you, Willow Keller," he returned, the devotion in his eyes as bright and true as it had been on their wedding day. "Today, tomorrow, and for all the days that follow." Their children, tired from their play, came running up to the porch, clamoring for attention and stories before bedtime. Henry scooped up little Daniel, while the older two climbed onto the swing on either side of their mother. "Tell us how you and Papa met," Elizabeth requested, as she often did at bedtime. At 5, she was already a romantic at heart. "Well," Willow began, sharing a smile with her husband over their daughter's head, "it all started in a little mining town called Animas Forks, where a seamstress with secrets met a rancher with dreams." As the story unfolded, familiar yet always new in the telling, Willow knew with absolute certainty that the ugly past she had once feared would define her had been transformed into something beautiful, a love story that would echo through generations, a testament to the healing power of true partnership and the endless possibilities that open up when two souls decide to paint their tomorrows together.